digitaljamsessions.com.
Thanks for coming to Create Futures. This is the second one that we've ever done. Basically, the brand has been set up to kind of explore new forms of creativity using emerging technology. So that's it. We've got some fantastic guests here tonight who are going to be talking to you about their experiences, and hopefully we'll get a debate going. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
All right, I'll start. Hi everyone, I'm Amalia. I'm working at Havas as Innovations Manager, which is pretty much, I think the best way to describe it, it's like Alexa for Havas and its clients. So either internally or externally answer briefs, they just give me a challenge and I try to find the best answer. And I'll go into a loop with Google Home.
I'm Sel. I'm Technical Director at an agency called Smack. We've worked traditionally with kind of high street retail clients, doing a lot of traditional tech, apps, websites, also looking now to a lot more the innovative things like chatbots and AI.
Hello, I'm Tanya. I'm the CEO and founder of Digital Jam, and I will be your friendly guide for this evening as your moderator.
And I'm Craig. I run my own consultancy. I'm American who came here 10 years ago for a 6-week stint with Burberry that became a 7-year journey. I'm leading that digital transformation. And now I'm a citizen of 2 countries, both of which are not doing very well.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria. I'm digital marketing and PR strategist and founder and CEO of Women in Wearables. Women in Wearables is UK's and Europe's first organisation for women in wearable tech, fashion tech, IoT, VR and AR industries. And we currently count, if I'm not wrong, 8,000 plus members in 20 countries. So if you are a woman interested in these industries, let me know. We can catch up later.
But guys, make some noise for these people, please. So I just want to say a few thank yous. So firstly, I just want to thank Zebra People who have kindly sponsored the bar. So if you guys are enjoying the booze, it's because of them. Just want to thank GL Pro for basically filming everything that's happening here.
I'm blinding the panelists with a bright light.
Just want to also thank Jing Daily, which is a luxury Chinese website that's basically streaming this event now through Facebook Live. So if anyone's doing anything naughty, be careful because you're live at the moment. And also just want to thank EngageWorks for loaning us this space. And after the event, they're going to show you some of the tech that's here. So feel free to have some fun here while you're here. But I'm going to leave it to Tanya, who's our MC. Go for it. Enjoy.
Thank you. Welcome. For anybody who's standing in the back, there are seats. I can see some seats left, so feel free to worm your way towards a seat. In the meantime, I'd like to start off by just figuring out what our thoughts are in terms of the future of technology and the application of technology at the moment. So I know that Craig and I were having a little chat about this earlier, so we're gonna air this now to the rest of the room. We were talking about facial recognition, and we were talking about it in the context of Apple and new phones, but I'm not going to go down the Apple route, and instead I'm just going to talk about what is the most recent piece of technology that you've seen kind of emerging into mobile technology that you think is the most interesting in terms of its possible application, whether that's from a retail perspective or how you see that kind of blossoming. I'm not going to name names because you named a specific company, but I'm not going to name names. But
God, I have no idea what I said. I'm in trouble. I talk an awful lot.
You might have mentioned that it's a mobile company, and it was definitely not Apple. So.
Well, no, I know. Here's the thing. So, biometric technology, which doesn't sound terribly exciting, has been around for a while, and I kind of got a bee in my bonnet on Friday with all of the media about how unsafe and everyone was so afraid. And the reality is, we can't talk about how safe everybody is, because if we talked about how biometric technology is being used to recognize bad people, and we were really clear about that, then we would not be at an advantage with it. But I can talk about Hitachi and some of the work that I've been doing with them, and they have been making the world a safer place through biometric technology. And what they're now doing is bringing that into the retail space. So why wouldn't you be recognized when you walk into a store and be greeted? Walmart's doing things in the United States where they're just, the first thing they started doing was, are people getting unhappy waiting in a queue to pay? And now they're realizing actually, because we can monitor blood pressure or heat sensitivity, are people actually possibly stealing? So there's operational things that can be done, but not just, in Poland, for example, it's not touch technology, it's finger vein technology, and you can get your money out. So when you go to a store, why wouldn't, as an employee, why wouldn't you unlock the stockroom by touching it and knowing who you are when you go in? I mean, why do we have employee cards now when we go in? And why do we have to pass those things when biometrics is at a place that we could actually use them to access work? So it's not just in retail, and what we were talking about is it's super exciting because all this thing is converging now, all these things are, and it's about the new ideas that are coming out of these really heavily invested and quite rich technology. So when Apple's talking about that, they didn't invent it. It's been around and really been researched. And so now what we're seeing is it's just coming to the consumer.
So
in ways that are meaningful, yeah?
I'm kind of curious here, because one of the things that you've mentioned there is the whole idea of it's not new. It's been around the block. And you know, there's a lot of technologies that we can say that for, whether it's VR or AR or whatever the thing is. These aren't new technologies. They've been around for a while, but their application and the way that people are thinking about using these technologies is evolving. And with that, there is a certain degree of a shift in the cultural attitude towards technology. Now, I don't know how many of you, how old any of you are in the room, but you know, maybe a couple of decades ago, you might have seen a lot of, you know, sci-fi horror movies about technology was going to take over the world and destroy it. You know, maybe Terminator or Lawnmower Man or whatever the thing was. And there was a real phobia, a real attitude towards technology that it was a bad and negative thing. And over the course of the last couple of decades, that attitude has kind of shifted a little bit, and people are a little bit more confident with technology. You know, we all carry a mobile phone in our pocket, and we don't think it's going to, you know, destroy the world. Having said that, when we talk about biometric technology, and we talk about the idea of perhaps, for example, inserting a chip in somebody's hand, there's still this kind of personal horror that people have with this, oh my God, you know, we can't insert technology into actual people because that's a step too far. So I'm kind of curious from this side of the room, because I know, Amalia, in your previous life before Havas, you've been doing a lot of really interesting stuff, especially around incubators and with a lot of kind of new startups. And you will have seen some of these startups, these technologies that people wanted to do just a little bit more with the technology that people weren't quite ready for yet. They weren't quite comfortable with it yet. So I'm interested to hear from you in terms of your, you know, kind of experience with some of those types of technologies that people were maybe a little bit not quite ready for it yet.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've definitely become more carefree with technology and what we give up to get access to stuff. I mean, Facebook knows my taste in men better than my friends because they know who I stalk online. They got my astrology chart, very important. They know how my grandma looks like, and it's all fine. Like, I'm a little bit disappointed in Mark that he's not putting it in better use, so I get better service, and instead he uses it to retarget flat tummy tea ads. But apart from that, I'm like, okay, like, he's a nice guy, he has a cute dog, like, you know, he's not gonna do anything shady with that. But, you know, if he got run over by a truck tomorrow, a self-driving truck, and Peter Thiel took over as CEO of Facebook, would I be as carefree then? I don't know. It's like, I think, like, and that's what Trump taught us very well. It's
Okay,
like,
we managed to dive straight into politics.
yeah, we won't go deep into politics, but, you know, it's you can't always just, you know, rely on what's happening. And I think that's like a big difference between what we've seen in the European tech scene and the US tech scene. And we've seen, especially with Uber, regulations and all that, sometimes it's an obstacle, but sometimes maybe it's a good thing. It's a hard balance to find. And with exponential technologies that we're facing now, I think ethics around technology is going to play a much more vital role, because, you know, it's one thing having a platform to, you know, shop online or something a little bit more harmless, like, you know, Mimi with, you know, cute cats or whatever. And it's another thing having artificial intelligence involved and having a lot more information like that you give out, but now it can all be connected together. So that makes it a lot more powerful. And I think for corporates as well, that's going to go more down the line, working with the technology partners, either as accelerators or individual startups, if there is an ethical alignment as well, because there are way more things at risk, and that is going to become more of a thing. I think ethics are going to introduce in computer science classes and all that, because it just have to at this point.
It's interesting that you say this, because I think there is this kind of grey zone at the moment when it comes to kind of the future of digital identity and how one perceives oneself within this kind of digital economy and the system that at the moment we're all participating in, whether we are aware of it or not, with social media. And we look at places like China, and there are certain examples where they were actively utilizing social media and social behaviors to reward people and give them points based on their performance and how they're interacting with the wider economy. And if they're a good citizen and they're doing the right things, they're getting points for that. And if they're not getting the points for that. And that has a direct impact on their economic well-being within that economy. And so I think there is this kind of interesting evolution of how this is becoming more and more integrated in the way that we live our day-to-day lives. But I am interested to kind of understand whether or not, from your perspective, you think that kind of what we're seeing in China, there's some of those examples of kind of beginning to make people accountable and responsible for their social behaviors and having a direct economic impact on their kind of digital identity, if you like. Whether or not we might see that kind of thing evolve into the retail economy of, you can't shop at certain stores if you've not been doing the things that you should be doing, or, you can't interact with certain brands if you haven't been doing the things that you should be doing.
I don't know if it'll go that far. That reminds me of, I don't know if you watch Black Mirror, but there's that, that episode, first episode of season 3, isn't it? Where, you end up knowing better doing things based on your social standing. I mean, from my perspective, my background's in development, and I've seen that a lot of the things that get created these days ultimately are kind of created by developers. And there's you can imagine, a lot of these things, ideas started in I've just got the stereotypical images of developers in a dark room in a basement somewhere trying to nerd away. This is going to be really, really cool. Or is it going to happen? And then they, it actually is. Every now and then it works out, and then one of these ideas comes to fruition. And then going along that train of thought, there's things that are happening now, obviously, with the whole Apple changed the way that we design things, and everyone's a UX designer now. There were no UX designers 5 or 10 years ago, but now everybody considers design and they understand its importance. And I think the same thing is happening in terms of kind of the ethical approach, and people are understanding that whereas design has a big impact on the way that we use technology, ethics is also coming into that role. So I don't think it's going to turn around immediately, and we'll be trying to cover up our fingerprints. I've got the film reference. I've got that scene from Demolition Man. I don't remember that from the 90s, where the guy needs to get into a secure area with his eyes. So Wesley Snipes scoops out his eyeball. I mean, no, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be there will be a gradual change. I think education will come into play. The whole, Mark Zuckerberg, for one of his good things and bad points, is bringing kind of the ethical fight to it. Every day there's an article about him, privacy concerns. So people are thinking about it more, governments are thinking about it more, agencies and companies are thinking about it more, and then naturally, I think, or at least I hope, the guidelines will be put in place before technology takes over and eats us all up.
Destroys us all.
Yeah. Before you move, can I just flip that for a minute? Because you asked the question if ethics or if our behavior will prevent us from doing things or qualify us for doing things. I come from a retail perspective and from luxury, and quite frankly, retail's broken. And the biggest problem that we have in retail today is that we have the wrong inventory. And this is because as retailers, we base the future on history. And so we look at what sold and what hasn't worked, and we look at old, stale data, and then we try to guess what people are going to buy. And the reality is now we can use all of these things ethically, but your physical location and your digital location, so let me clarify that. Digital location meaning where you've been, what you do on your phone. Physical, where you go. And when you put those things together, you get contextual, which ties right back into everything you're doing, right? And therefore, you can understand who might buy, and you can start to predict. And so then it's looking at that data in real time, and then making predictive analytics that then help us figure out where people want to shop and what they want to buy.
Yeah.
So it's giving people what they like and what they're interested in. There'll always be newness, and that'll always be a top top tier that will buy that and pay premium for that, and people will develop that. But for most people, it's knowing where to get what you like, and where to find the man, where to find whatever. And so everything that's been built and developed, used ethically, it's not about saying you can or cannot get in. It's saying here's what you want.
I find it interesting that you're talking about this, because ultimately what we're talking about is the application and collation of data, and how that data is being utilised. And this is one of the areas, Maria, where you've been kind of working for a while. We mentioned that you're from Women of Wearables, but we didn't mention your startup.
My other business.
And Keisha, umbrellas, and what you're doing there. A lot of that is really around data, let's be honest. So why don't you explain first of all to our lovely audience exactly what a Keisha is, and then talk about the application of the data that you're utilising.
Yes, so how I ended up being in a wearable tech space is 3 years ago. My team and I, we started thinking about how we could build a smart umbrella, a product that isn't smart at all, because a lot of people lose their umbrellas all the time. So we invented this smart umbrella where we put a beacon, we all know what beacon is, in the strap around the umbrella. So once when you turn it on, and when you download the app, you basically pair your umbrella to your phone. So if you leave it in a public place, you get notification that you left it. So you can, at that point, you can either snooze, you can expand the radius, or you can go back using Google Maps and bring your umbrella back. But what we have done, we merged products that were already there. So umbrella, a beacon, an app. We haven't invented basically anything new. We use existing technology to come up with another type of the product. And it's very simple, stupid product. I always say, we haven't put additional sensors in it to, measure all sorts of things. It's very simple solution for everyday problem. So you get weather forecast, you get push notification if you live in a public place, and that's it. And that's the only data we basically collect from people. So, you can sign up by using social media, and app will store your data around where you were, moving, where you are, and where your umbrella is left. And now to come back to the topic of, ethics and, and how much data we collect, I really have a big community now of women, building wearable tech devices, fashion tech devices, health tech devices. And it always surprises me how, almost when you launch that product, at that point, a lot of founders think about, oh my God, I have to think about privacy issues. Because we all use devices and we voluntarily give up our data without even thinking, what is this company using my data for? Who has access to this? We all click some terms and conditions and terms of use, accept, we don't even read that. And I think cybersecurity, security of the data will become increasingly important, even more than it is now in the near future. And actually recently, I was moderating an event when one of the startups that was pitching was building an application that you can use when you're purchasing something, but using blockchain technology. There's no way anyone can get access to your data because it's using biometrics, it's using your finger or your basically face. You have to scan that before you sign up. But it's amazing. And I wasn't even aware that, using blockchain, we can completely remove that backdoor. There's no backdoor, which when you crack down the system, you can get other people's data. So I think that will be increasingly important in the future. And I think if we can somehow introduce blockchain technology and artificial intelligence in a good way to the world of wearable technology and anything that's hardware, right? That will be amazing, because it will definitely decrease the amount of opportunities for hacking and cracking the systems and devices. And in full honesty, I think that more than 70% of devices that we use today, either as wearable tech or smart home devices, are not secure at all. And I know this from people who are more experienced than me. And when I listen to to these people, oh boy, yeah,
you get a little bit paranoid.
Yes.
Yeah. But one of the things that you were saying there about this kind of attitude towards data, kind of interested and curious to kind of get sentiments here, because one of the things that a lot of people have been saying is that actually we're probably within 2 generations now of a generation that will no longer care about data privacy, because actually data will become a currency, it will become an economy that people understand already. Kids of kind of the 15-year-old generation, they understand that their data is valuable. And they understand that when they share their data, they expect something in return. There's already that expectation of value exchange. And so we're coming to a stage where we're almost on the brink now of maybe 2 generations before it's no longer like this whole thing of our generation in this room, we're very, well, data, it's my privacy, I've got to protect it. But these kids, they're just kind of openly, well, fine, I'll give you my data, but give me something in return. And I don't mind if you're following me around and tracking me and knowing all my personal information, because I understand that that's part of the exchange. So I'm kind of curious as to whether we feel like, when we get to that point of zero generation, if you like, who don't care about their privacy anymore, how does that impact the way that you're interacting at the moment in terms of data and retail products and fashion products, in terms of you have this whole different currency that you're going to be able to trade and exchange with these young people? How do you feel that you're going to be utilizing that kind of
I think
exchange?
definitely younger generations are more aware of the information companies have for them. I've recently been studying a little bit about Gen Alpha and what's coming next. And, I was invisible up to the moment I went online, which was when I got into engineering school, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But kids these days, first of all, and that's something even like companies like Facebook say, like, parents, get your kids off, like they're not supposed to have a profile. But a lot of parents, think that's the best present for their baby, to create an Instagram account for them, say their username, and so create accounts for a person that legally should not be on all these social platforms. Or they post them there are a set of profiles that get created, even if you don't have a profile of their own, if they don't put the profile, even if they put up the pictures and all that, facial recognition. These kids, like from birth, they have a digital footprint, which is the first generation basically to have a digital footprint from birth. So that already puts them in a position that they have already given up stuff without even signing up.
Their parents have signed their lives away.
Yeah, their parents basically sold them online to get a few likes. So these kids, I think, and that's why we've seen, Snapchat and all these kind of, growing a little bit underground platforms at the beginning, on the rise in younger generations. First of all, they didn't want to have their parents know anything, but I think they're also aware that, I don't want this information to just be like a ghost, like a shadow following me around forever, my past pictures and all that, because, nothing gets really, really, really deleted. So I think there's going to be a shift from that generation, especially, that they already have been born with this burden, with this account, and they know that, it's already a thing for them. So I think it's going to be a little bit interesting of how that gets managed as well. And as I said before, up to now, all that information has been fragmented. You said, I got my iPhone that has this information, then I have my Gmail that has this information, then I have my Facebook that has this information. But, with artificial intelligence, with big data, with graph database and all that, information gets more and more and more connected. So it just takes more and more meaning and more context. And that's what makes it more important.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to this, Frank?
Well, I did some work. I don't know how many of you know Phil Sheldrake, but I did some work with Phil Sheldrake at Burberry, and he said his prediction for exactly this is that we're all going to wake up one day and realize, and this is my words, not his, that this is actually a commodity. And right now we're quite happy about sharing it because we're getting something in return. But it will become an awareness where we will actually have, just like we have bank accounts with our cash, we will own our own data, and it won't just be exchanging it for a little bit. It will actually figure out how to commoditize that. And maybe these kids who wake up with have been digital since birth will say, hey, I want some money for this, and figure it out. But it could easily happen. It makes a lot of sense, actually, because the more that we're producing, and we know this statistic, right? Most of the data in the past 2 years, and it's been done in the history of mankind. So why wouldn't we then figure out how to, and maybe someone here in this audience is already starting to work on that. Maybe that's your next new digital idea. I don't know, but it answers a lot of the ethic questions. If you say, I own it and now I agree to loan you that or to give you some of that currency.
License my identity to you.
To add on that, I think that's really, really good point what Tanya just said, because as the data becomes increasingly more important, I think we'll also notice the difference. And I always say that there are two differences, two different types of companies. We have companies that, are developing a product like we are doing with Smart Umbrella, and we're, building a community around that product, but we are selling the product ultimately. But for example, with the company that Women in Wearables is, we are building a community. So at some point, when you grow this community big enough, your community becomes your product, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can do with that, community something. You can, get sponsors, partners, you have valuable information, because a lot of companies from this niche are now, approaching us and asking, can we collaborate? Can we sponsor? Can we do something together? So I think information will become increasingly important, especially for companies that are building communities.
Okay, so following on from that then, one of the kind of the key areas that we kind of start need to refocus on now in advance of that is retraining and reskilling and shifting those skill sets across, because actually at the moment data science and data analytics isn't necessarily the sexy fashionable thing that might become in the future, but certainly right now I think that there's probably a bit of a skills gap in understanding the application of that data and how it can be utilized in different verticals or with different products, and how best to take advantage of this kind of emerging generation who begin to understand the economics of data. But how do we make sure that they're actually, training in this area, or how do we shift existing skill sets into that? And Amalia, I'm going to come back to you again with kind of the training and some of the educational pieces that you've done. What do you think are the kind of key skill set areas that need that shift or need a bit of a rethink in order to kind of be planning for these types of futures?
I think, and that's why I worked a lot in the intersection between industries and technology, different industries and technology. I think that's a basic first step, understanding what you're doing with what you're doing. Especially in wearables, early in the beginning, it was very obvious when you saw a wearable company, if it was a tech team leading or the design team leading. It was something beautiful and maybe limited in functionality, or with something like the functionality, but like who would ever use that? So I think, the more these worlds come together, the better it is. And I see it even like in hackathons, a lot of times. Now it's much better, but I remember like back early in the days, you would see like the business people would sit there, the development would sit there, and it was always like a power battle. Like the developer people thought like, oh, these people are just like ideas, talk, and they don't know anything. They don't know how to write a line of code. And then the business people were like, oh, these are like the little slaves, like, how the guys that build the pyramids, and they're just gonna execute my vision. That just never works, honestly. It's just a bad balance, throws things off. And most of the time, it's just fear. It's lack of understanding what's happening with these worlds. When I was working with London College of Fashion, and a lot of designers came up to me, you would see that the designer was like, oh, I'm the creative person, and now I need to partner up with the business person, and they'll just do the business part, and I'll just do the creative part. But in reality, that doesn't work. You need to, maybe that's not something you love and you don't have to do everything by yourself, but you need to understand some basic stuff, because it's a matter of control. It's a matter of working better, collaborating better. So I think just sharing knowledge, some basic knowledge to understand how we can work together to create something better, I think that's where it falls. Like getting to understand with different industries, what does this mean for me? Even like, and you can see it even between working startups and corporates. It's a management of expectations a lot of the times. Startups need to understand what they can get out of working with a corporate, but also they need to understand why a corporate has so many limitations and all that. So I think it's an interesting point, and we're getting much better to it, because through events like this and many other stuff, we get to understand a little bit more about what each of us can and what we can, contribute. But I think that's where the magic lies, really, in better collaboration.
Okay, so this key word here is collaboration.
Yes.
And one of the things that I know that you guys at Snack are kind of really hot on is collaboration with different types of agencies and different types of technologies, and working with brands to kind of find that magic mix, if you like, of the right solution. And I'm kind of curious from your experience, talking from Amalia's perspective of this kind of collaboration of the technical people kind of leaping over the fence with the commercial people. Do you see a lot of that happening? Because I know that traditionally there is this big chasm between the two.
Oh yeah, I'm the developer building the pyramids. It's me.
But you've had some interesting projects that I think that you probably have a few experiences where there's been less of that chasm.
I think it is changing now, and I think I think so. In development specifically, you just have this idea of the front end developer and the back end developer, and this guy does his job and that guy does his job. But I mean, it's been a while now. I haven't seen that to really exist, and I think that transcends to a much higher level. Everybody, to a sense, in any business, for example, needs to be sort of commercially aware now. You need to understand what you're doing is actually having a contribution to the wider scale. So yeah, I mean, I guess it does. I think for Smack specifically, in terms of the agency, we do a lot of things which couldn't be done unless all of the team had an understanding about how each other works and there's a huge amount of collaboration. So you don't have a developer who has no idea how to design, just in the same way you don't have a designer who has no idea how to code. Everything. It's making me sound like a slave driver here because everybody has to do everything. But I think you kind of naturally have to do that. And I think going up to the level again, in terms of what you're saying about, how the next generation will skill up. I mean, I think I'm quite optimistic generally, but I think naturally it will happen. It has naturally happened for us. Things like things like the whole social media statement that you made, it takes off because that's cool. Nobody wants to sort of go into data privacy. You don't go to uni thinking, I'm going to be a data privacy expert. It's not exactly the sexiest thing you're gonna learn. But people do go into the creative industries. But then conversely, it does go back. Now that we have got all of our information just flying around everywhere, people are interested in that, and so all of a sudden it is a talking topic, like we talked about, a trendy thing. So again, come back down to Smack. This is something that all of us are considering now as well. Every single brief, I'm sure everyone's getting hit by the whole GDPR thing that's going on next year. All of our clients are talking to us about privacy. Just how I said earlier, everyone 5 years ago started to understand what UX was, and everybody thinks that they're a UX designer. Now everybody wants to be a data privacy expert. So things, the way that the market shifts and evolves, I guess, forces you in a way to wear hats you wouldn't naturally have taken.
So, Maria, I'm going to kind of throw this one in your general direction, because if I recall rightly, you used to work over with Huckletree. Yeah?
Yes.
So one of the things that you would have seen a lot of at Huckletree is this kind of unifying of terminology and people kind of coming together and merging the battle lines, so to speak.
Yes.
And I'm curious from your perspective, one of the interesting things about Huckletree obviously is that it's a co-working space, and there's less of that traditional 9 to 5 and everybody's got an individual role and they all do their specific thing. It's much more collaborative, and you can see all sorts of different types of creative conversations that spin up in a place like Huckletree. Do you feel like that's the future of where we're seeing kind of these types of businesses and processes going? It's going to be less of these big corporations employing people 9 to 5 and you have a job and this is your job role and your job spec and your job title, but more of I'm adaptable. I kind of do many different things. I wear many different hats, and I'm going to wear the hat that's most relevant today. Kind of.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. I think when I was actually working as a community lead, it was my first full-time job when I got to London. I moved to London 3 years ago before I actually started my other businesses, and I think that definitely open plan areas. If startups are working in those areas, open plan areas or spaces, or corporates are now doing that. My husband works in a big corporation, a tech company from US that has a big office in Piccadilly, and they purposely build an open plan. They want everyone to work together. Now, he's a developer, so he's very skeptical about open plan spaces, because he thinks that, tech people sometimes do need that, privacy. They need their own office to work from. But I can definitely see, we all know that, every week or two, new co-working space pops up in London. And this is something I think definitely is the future. And on a separate note, working as a freelancer myself, I wear many hats, and I know definitely more people that are wearing more hats than having a 9 to 5 full-time job. I think it will be the future of work, because sometimes a company cannot find the right employee in that city, someone who's ready to work full-time. They just want to find someone who's very flexible. They might be living in Thailand and they will hire him for a project. And I think sometimes that can definitely bring better results. There are situations where you need to have your team, around you and in the same place. But a good example of company with that kind of open culture working remotely is Buffer, which is social media scheduling tool. So they have teams in different cities around the world, but majority of their team works remotely, which is amazing. And they are one of the most successful social media tools companies.
Okay, so we have a living example of this in the form of Craig.
How's that?
In as much as you don't work in a kind of a corporate structure.
Well, that's true.
You're you're engaging with, as you say, outsourcers or suppliers.
Yeah.
And you're bringing the right team. You're assembling the right team for each project. So it's not like you have a head count and you have a number of people sitting in an office waiting for a job to come through.
Yeah.
It's more a case of, when the work comes in, I will put the right team together and we will put that team together for that specific project.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about your process.
Well, I mean, I'm probably the oldest person in the room if I look around. At least I have the grayest beard. I'm kidding. We'll talk later. And I've lived through cubicles in Rockefeller Center that were 6 feet high, and it was a rat's maze. And I wondered if people sort of withered and died, not finding their way out. And then complete open plan, to the point where it was too open, because there are times that people need to have a meeting room or need to have a private conversation or negotiate a contract that you don't hear. And I've seen it shift to, we're not going to have desk phones, and that's really smart and great, except when you need to make a phone call. So people would all put, and it just, welcome to hello, and then fumble while people are trying to answer the phone. And watching people then putting in earphones in case the phone rang, which then meant everyone thought they had music on and no one talked to anyone in an open plan. So the problem here is we just can't throw it at people. And I'm all about this remote. I totally get that. And that's exactly what I do. Mm-hmm. And there's so much software now that allows us to collaborate in real time. And I have a friend who works at a well-known company, but she also has a line of products that she does in her own creative time. And she was quite excited because Etsy had picked up some of her product. And so she was actually just showing me how it happened. But what she didn't realize she was showing me was the conversation started on Instagram, and then it moved to Twitter, and then it moved to WhatsApp. And then when it was time for a contract to come through, it came through email. So when I go into big corporations, the first thing I tell them is email is not your job. And I get really cross when I hear people say, my inbox is clear. I don't care. That's not your job. That's not why you were hired. But there are people that are neurotic. If they don't have, I have 20,000 unread emails across 6 email accounts. I don't care. And I have kids go, oh my God, how can you have that number on your phone? That would drive me crazy. That's not my job. My job is to collaborate with people and to interact and pull them together to do things. So you've got to figure out what the strategy is. But once you understand what the brand needs to do and what the strategic objectives are, then it's finding the right people, whether that's in the organization or not. And one of the things we did a lot of work around at Burberry was allowing people to hot desk so that they could sit and work around projects. So you didn't have to always sit on the second floor if you were in IT. And that was, the mind reels, because it was like, but that's my desk. And no, it's not. And it's not your home either. So, this is what's happening. Let's all work together on this and book out a war room or a conference room or whatever's needed when you needed some privacy to do stuff you didn't want everyone else to do. But that has to be empowered by human resources and sanctioned by C-level executives. And if they don't, it doesn't work. It's hard. But when you work for yourself and you're moving around all over London, then it's a whole lot easier to do. And between, Skype and WhatsApp and Slack and, chatter with Salesforce, it doesn't matter. There's just so many tools now that we can run projects and get things done. I have a client, who's a very small client. I'm going to try to be careful about saying this, but so I won't mention the name. And the nature of this client is they how do I say this without revealing who it is? It's not fashion. But the founder of this, he has a clinical practice as well as this product. And when he's in treatment, there are times that the patient needs to sort of, be left alone, but he doesn't leave the room. And so even though there's only 4 or 5 people in this brand, he will email them. And now they've become this email culture. And I'm like, okay, you're all in the same building and there's like 5 of you. Like, it's just scary. Like, why aren't you just instant messaging one another? Why aren't you just texting when something comes to mind? Because it's starting to become a cover your ass culture. And, oh, well, it wasn't in an email. I didn't know. oh my God, you're in the same building. You're literally like one floor from one another. But it's just because the owner is secluded away. And so that's how he's thinking to communicate. And it's turning into something corporate when it's like that big. So it's a matter of, look, cultures, you have to design the culture of your company. You do. And you all know this because you're working with your own brands now where you're doing that. And we were very lucky at Burberry to have Tony Shea come in and talk about Zappos and delivering happiness. And his first company, he quit because he hired a bunch of experts and they all became pompous jerks and nobody collaborated. And his second company was like, you know what, everybody, he will pay you $5,000 in your final, when you come in for your first day at work, they walk in with human resources and say, whoever wants to leave gets $5,000 right now. And some people do. And he's like, good, get out. I don't want you unless you want to be here. And then they have to do all the rounds and do lots of different jobs before they go into the job they're doing. And that's so they know how to collaborate. That's so they know how to work across. I'm a very curious person and I'm very extroverted, as you can tell. And so if I go into a company, I sort of find my way and talk to people. But some people aren't that way. And you don't want everyone introverted. And you don't want everyone extroverted. But you do need to figure out a way to facilitate for them to find one another. I did an away day for M&S and I nearly fell over. And God, I'll never call me back down for saying this. But there were almost 250 marketing executives from M&S. And if you're in the room, sorry, and on Facebook Live. But some of them didn't even know that the other departments exist or what building, what floor they were located on in the building. How can you be part of a team and not know where other people reside?
It's definitely
because you get so big giving people tasks and worrying about keeping them in track. And human resources, unfortunately, is conditioned to help do this as well. And it's tricky to say, okay, but we need you to do lots of things, even though you are kind of hired to do this. But we are moving that way. We totally are.
We've seen a little bit with that with Havas now that we have a village and we're all in the same building.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely love and like hot desk every day. So I want to meet everyone in the building. It's been really lovely and you already see it in the work and how we work together with clients and all that. But you know what, it's a little bit like the retail experience is changing. You know, we heard Apple with the Apple Times Squares. I won't comment on the name and all that, but there's no reason why even companies can work like that, you know, have work almost as a hangout, as a platform basically for people to collaborate and work together and achieve great results and work that they're proud of, instead of being like, you know.
It's interesting though, because one of the things that you talked about there was kind of the different ways in which people actually are able to engage with each other. And you talked about this whole thing of email isn't your job. And I'd love to see by show of hands anybody here who has more than 10,000 emails currently in their inbox unread. Anybody?
We have.
Yay.
Okay.
All right.
Because it's a cultural kind of part of the mental conditioning of our work and our job is if somebody sends an email, you're going to respond to the email. You're going to see it, you're going to do something with it, you're going to either delete it or respond to it or pass it on to somebody else. But that email is something that you're going to do something with. And I'm kind of interested in this idea of, as you say, like instant messaging or texting somebody or just reaching out and collaborating and communicating with somebody in a different way, utilizing a different technology. How we're seeing that kind of evolve, because sure, you've got things like Slack, and to be fair, I have way too many Slack channels on the go at the moment as it is. It's not always the most effective tool, and everybody has a kind of a different way of approaching these communication methods and these communication tools. But one of the things that I think is quite interesting is the way that these communication tools are now being kind of appropriated, shall we say, for commercial gain. And a really interesting kind of example of this is with WeChat in Asia, and the desire for WeChat to be utilized as a commercial retail channel rather than as a social media communication channel. So I'm kind of curious from your perspectives in terms of where is that line of productivity, communication versus consumer and commercialization?
Well, for me, it's a balance, like having more inboxes haven't helped at all. Like it's just like more ways for not to get sit down, basically. I'm sorry, that's what it is. And I found when I was doing the back and forth between London and sunny Greece, it's always the most productive time for me because people know I will be here for a week for X amount of days. So if they want to have a meeting with me, they're going to make it count. Otherwise, people just have meetings, and that's something that I always say to corporates working with startups. I'm like, listen, you get paid to have a meeting. An entrepreneur gets a pay cut to have a meeting with you. So you better be respectful of their time.
Yeah.
And I always say to entrepreneurs as well, I know you want to have the big partnerships and all that, but you need to know where to draw the line, and you just cannot keep having meetings or changing stuff without knowing if this partnership is going somewhere and what it really means for you, like what's really your gain. You need to weigh things out. In terms of using social media and like bots and all that we've seen, I love it as an idea, but it's just so rarely used right. Like, I communicate with my mother with Viber stickers. Like that. It's like back and forth stickers, and that's how we communicate. And you think I'm gonna go on a 15-minute chat with your brand to buy some shit that I can do in 5 minutes online? Like, why? But there can be great applications that people just don't do it. Like, I went to buy crepe the other day, had my little paper loyal card because I love my free stuff, and they told me, oh, we don't do this anymore. We have an app. And I said, what? An app? I don't have space on my phone. Who does? And I did delete pictures with my family to download your stupid loyalty app. Then they told me I would get the crepe for free, so I did it. But that could be easily solved with a bot. Like, bots can do this thing for you. You don't need to download it. You can communicate in a meaningful way where it counts.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I think we have the right tools, but sometimes we get overwhelmed that, oh, I need to use it, rather than thinking, okay, but how do I need to use it?
This is something that I think is really interesting, actually, this whole kind of people using the technology for the sake of using the technology rather than doing something meaningful or purposeful or something that's actually effective with the technology. And Sal, I know this is one of those things that you probably get challenged with an awful lot when it comes to your clients, just kind of come to you and say, I don't want a thing. You're like, and why do you want the thing?
Yeah.
So, what's your kind of take on this?
Oh, it's so hard. It's always that I've got that diagram that you might have seen where you've got the idea, and then you give it to the client and it gets trampled on. We had this conversation earlier about so at Smack we've done so many chatbot briefs this year. It's the trending thing, isn't it? And not a single one has converted. And it's not. I mean, like I was saying earlier, there are agencies and there's obviously a lot of chatbots going out there, but I think. And you can have the whole argument of, are people ready for it yet? It is a volatile industry to move into. But yeah, the bottom line is that utility factor. So many of the bots that we get asked to create serve absolutely zero real purpose. Again, with that name's working with a high street fashion brand, and it was literally just to push product at you in a spammy way that really kind of aligned with their campaign. And it's great from the market, because I think we're looking at it wrong as well, because it was commissioned by a marketing team, and they've obviously got metrics and KPIs and all this stuff, which is just the wrong way of looking at it. And I'm not sort of trying to say I know the right. I don't think no one's got the model right yet, and I don't really know how you would measure utility. Maybe that is something that we need to start looking into sort of measurable terms. I'm trying to think of what would be useful. I use OK Google all the time. So like whenever, and there's nothing it's trying to sell to me, but it can do, it can do a lot of things which are useful. I think I actually don't know how we'll challenge it. Lots of the stuff that we've been getting have been trying to replace the role of a human, and I think it just. People again aren't ready for that, because even if we did nail it tomorrow, I think there's something. It's kind of like when you get the checkouts at the stores, isn't it? There's something that there is a certain thing that's missed, even if it does the job exactly the same. You still speak to people who just want to sort of chat with someone, get the stuff bagged by someone else, like me.
It's interesting though that you're talking about kind of the useful application of a bot and AI as a thing, because I'm just going to say this so that you all feel really depressed about how underachieving you are, because recently I was judging for Acorn Aspirations Hackathon. Basically 12 to 17-year-old kids coming up within 2 weeks, coming up with ideas for businesses, and then the coding stuff and actually building stuff. 12-year-old girl on her own, because the rest of her team disappeared on her, built an AI bot that was basically designed for young girls who were suffering from depression, so that they had somebody they could speak to. and it was just freakishly good. And she's 12 years old. She coded the thing on her own and just basically threw it out in the world.
You go, girl.
But that's so I advise. I'm an advisor for Apps for Good, and Apps for Good's been around for 5 years, and it's a classroom curriculum. But actually, it's teaching kids coding and computer sciences, but they don't pitch it that way. So the kids have to create a problem like what you're talking about, and it has to be relevant to them, and therefore then they pitch it, and they learn how to collaborate, they learn how to build things, they learn how to present. It's incredible. I mean, some things 9-year-olds are coming up with, but it's because it's meaningful to them. It's meaningful to them, and that can be. I mean, Allergy Basket was one of the winners, this year, and I love that because one of the kids had food allergies to chemically sort of stuff that's not normal. Like not common to say I'm allergic to rice or whatever. No. This was like I'm allergic to polysorbate 80, whatever. And so they figured out a way to be able to scan the barcode of products and then you put in your profile and whatever you're allergic to, it'll tell you whether it's safe or not to buy that. And that's because this kid could die if he eats this stuff. When we collaborate and come up with meaningful ways that technology solve problems, whether it's to shop, whether it's to navigate, whatever it is, that's when it happens. And there's a huge place for chatbot. I've worked with an Italian telco company and a startup from California, and entering a chatbot into a conversation with, I forgot to bring a shirt today. Oh, well, here, why don't we pull in Tommy? And then Tommy Hilfiger's chatbot comes in and says, what type of shirt? Until it gets to a point where it's ready to hand off and we can shop together, then yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And that's happening. All of that stuff is happening. And chatbots starting a conversation, and with AI, and you know this, the smarter they get, the more realistic they become. Give me a call center and it's a fight in the beginning, not because of the person, it's a fight getting to a person. We all know that. Press this, press that. The number you seem to be calling from is your number. No shit, Sherlock. And I'm with you. I don't carry a loyalty card, and I don't want an app either. You know who I am. I've got a digital receipt. Just give me the money off when I'm at the till, or shut up about it, because I'm already loyal to you. And it's that sort of to remove all of those barriers. But we're so used to, we have a loyalty program. Okay, great. That's as far as you should be thinking. Now, how can you change that entirely? And that's a big change in a corporation. It's a huge change.
One of the things that I like that you're saying there is this idea, kind of the elegant solution, the one that doesn't have to be in your face, and that people don't need to be kind of told, hey, by the way, we're giving you this thing and we're doing this thing for you because, you're going to love us for it. But that kind of subtle, by the way, we've just been really efficient and just get on with your life. Go live your life. I don't know how many people have experienced or tried experimenting with kind of new Amazon stores and being able to wander in and wander back out again without having to go to a cash point or a checkout. I'm kind of curious from your experience, Maria, in terms of with Huckletree, whether you've seen any of that kind of elegant solutions emerging, rather than people trying to be kind of very upfront and in your face with the technology and how they're applying that to the consumer journey, the consumer process as such.
First of all, I just want to say that, I'm all about reducing the amount of apps and platforms you participate on. I get stressed out about using too many. I think, for example, Slack was developed with the intention to ease up everyone who's using too many inboxes. But then you get, as you said, you get in so many different groups that at some point you just have to shut it down and just not use it. And then people get mad at me because they say, well, I sent you 5 messages on Slack. Why haven't you replied back? Well, actually stop using it because I get, stressed out about it. Yes, I think the future of technology will definitely bring more focus on personalization, because it's all about personal approach. There's no one size fits all in any niche or vertical. For example, one of the cool things, which is still quite experimental, but it's still very interesting, is what Rebecca Minkoff did in New York in one of her flagship stores with her smart mirrors. So I think when you enter a store, whatever kind of experience you wanna get of product, because I ultimately think buying a product is all about experience. You make your decision if that experience is very personalized and meaningful to you. So I think for brands, it will be extremely important to find out a way how they can, in a right way, they can approach their customers, current customers, future customers, in a right way that's relevant to them.
Okay. So talking about this kind of relevancy, and just because I'm really aware that Jing Daly are over there, hello, let's talk about this issue around cultural understanding. and perception, because there is this kind of a little bit of a delineated line, shall we say, between the cultural understanding of the East versus the West, as for example, and understanding actually how a consumer in a different part of the world is necessarily going to get that personalized experience, and what the value of personalization means to somebody in Japan or China, for example, versus somebody in the West. And I'm curious if any of you have had any kind of direct experiences of that kind of culture clash when trying to deliver on a consumer product.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. And again, I think that's where collaboration will help a lot, because, you can't have, somebody developing an independent solution here in West, and then somebody else developing a completely different solution for the East. But, at the end of the day, some things like An Affair to Remember, like everybody loves this movie, no matter what part of the world you are, like some things are core, it's about humanity and they're mutual. So even though these, in a sense, translated in different cultures, the core of what's behind it, it's still the same. And these two teams should know what each other is doing. So I don't see it, I see it more like as being interconnected as well. And, we've been running Global Fashion Battle for a while, and that's been very interesting to see. Apart from the collaboration between different industries, collaboration and learning between different cultures and different countries. So the people from the startup scene, people that develop technologies, understand what are the challenges, what's the thought process between their co-working, in a sense, in other places of the world. So I think we've really seen, and that really brought people together, the way that they learn together, the way that they exchange perspectives. And again, I think collaboration is a big key there, because I don't think you can do like something viewed as a completely separate, like parallel universes. They're still interconnected. And somebody that grew up in China maybe moves to London and to study fashion, as we all know, very common, and then they stay here for a while. So, it's not like I'm A, you're B, like everything gets super interconnected in this world. People travel around, work with a million different cultures, learn from each other, and technology solutions should reflect that. They shouldn't be isolated.
Indeed. Well, what I will say is I'm very aware we're out of time, so we're going to wrap it up right there. But before we do wrap it up, I believe Richard has a word or two to say.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, guys. Can you guys make some noise for me? Rich, you want to come and...
Okay, hello. I'm going to talk to you for less than 2 minutes. That's a commitment. My name's Richard. I'm the Client Service Director for EngageWorks. We are a creative technology agency, and we work upstairs, and we do other stuff down here, like this. We work across a number of sectors, from professional services companies such as Accenture and EY, creating collaborative work environments, to retail brands where our focus is on enhancing customer experience, enabling customers to discover information about their products and services, and selling more stuff. We love technology, but we love creative approach more than the technology, and we try to marry the creative approach with the technology to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve in your context. And myself and Chris, who's a guy waving over there, will be loitering with intent and drinking with your good selves for the next half hour or so. Feel free to come speak to us, otherwise thanks a lot for coming. And that's like even closer to 1 minute than 2. Cheers.
Make some noise for yourselves as well. We know that your time is valuable. We really appreciate you guys being part of this community that we're trying to build. So thank you so much.
digitaljamsessions.com